This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
Happy Friday to you, Kentucky. Last Friday before Christmas. This is David Walls, Executive Director of the Family Foundation, and you're listening to Kentucky's Voice, where faith, family, and freedom are always at the center of the conversation. I'm excited to be your guest host today as we once again take a look at the cultural, legal, and spiritual crossroads of our state and our Commonwealth, and so that we can see how we as people of faith and conviction can respond with clarity, courage, and truth. If you're not familiar with the Family Foundation, we're a Christian public policy organization on the front lines defending Kentucky families and the biblical values that make them strong. We work towards a vision and a state where God is honored, religious liberty flourishes, families thrive, and life is cherished. You can learn more at kentuckyfamily.org to get plugged in with us. You can also text 502-571-0970 to be a part of today's conversation. We've got a great program today. I'm really excited. We got two special guests that will be coming up in the next segments of the program. But I just had to start off today's program. I know yesterday, Tom and Bob kind of teed me up and shared a little bit about some exciting news that took place at your Kentucky Capitol just this week. Maybe you've seen the news, maybe you haven't. But earlier this week, the historic Ten Commandments Monument was restored to your Kentucky Capitol grounds. Thanks to the great work of our Kentucky legislature, HJR 15, House Joint Resolution 15, by Representative Shane Baker passed and set up a framework to restore this historic monument that unfortunately had essentially been kicked off the Capitol grounds, not allowed to be put back in place many years ago because of a lawsuit filed by the ACLU. We're thankful that the legal environment has changed incredibly, and we're seeing a restoration of religious liberty across the United States. But I just have to share a story as we get started here today. I was actually up at the Capitol on Wednesday of this week and was walking around the front side of the Capitol, didn't know that the monument was going to be restored, knew it was supposed to take place before the end of the year, saw a little flurry of activity, and walked over to Monument Park. And I will tell you, I was amazed to see they were literally in the process of unloading the 7,000-pound beautiful granite Ten Commandments monument. And it was just a great sight to see. And so we were able, myself and one of our teammates, Jesse Green, our legal counsel, to be there to witness the entire thing being restored. We had recorded a video of that and shared it on our social media channels that's now gone viral. I think it's been seen over 1 million times. We're going to play that clip coming up in the next segment. But this is, as we said in a statement that we released on Wednesday, we're incredibly thrilled to see the historic Ten Commandments Monument return to its proper grounds. My hope and prayer is that the Lord will use this monumental and historic occasion to lead Kentuckians back to the biblical principles and values that our society was built upon. I'm excited that today in the next segment, one of your great state representatives who proudly supported returning the Ten Commandments Monument to the Capitol, State Representative Ryan Dotson, is going to be joining with us. We're going to be talking about that and many other things with Representative Dotson. So I hope you'll stay tuned for an exciting conversation in the next segment. Stay with us on this last Friday before Christmas.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Top stories here on the night team. Earlier this year, Kentucky's Senate and House effectively passed a bill bringing a monument of the Ten Commandments right back to the Capitol grounds in Frankfort. Kentucky was given the monument in 1971 by the Fraternal Order of Eagles. It stood in Monument Park on the Capitol grounds. It was removed in 1980 for construction, but was then blocked because of what's called the Lemon Act, a now defunct law abandoned by the Supreme Court in 2019. Which differentiates religious and secular motives in government policy to abide by the Establishment Clause. Now, the monument made its return after the bill passed in both the Senate and the House here in Kentucky.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. And again, happy Friday to you on this last Friday before we get to celebrate Christmas. I'm David Walls, Executive Director of the Family Foundation. And I'm excited that the Ten Commandments Monument has been restored to the Kentucky Capitol grounds. We were blessed to be able to film this historic day and footage of it being restored on the Capitol early this week. And I'm really excited to get to talk to my good friend, State Representative Ryan Dotson, about this historic occasion. Well, wasn't that amazing to see? If you're listening on the radio, I encourage folks to go to our social media channels at Family Foundation or our website at kentuckyfamily.org. But I want to bring into the conversation State Representative Ryan Dotson. I know he's a friend to this program. He's been on before, but he is a current state representative. He's running for Congress in the 6th Congressional District. Ryan, Representative Dotson, we're excited to have you on and talk with you today.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and it's always a great conversation. You and I have always engaged well. We've worked well together over the years, getting some great legislation passed, and it's been a privilege working with you through the time that I've been in the Kentucky legislature. You spearheading the Family Foundation here in Kentucky has really been a breath of fresh air and a great support system for a lot of conservatives like myself, and I appreciate you, David.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you, sir. Well, I first just want to get your reactions. I know you were in strong support of restoring the Ten Commandments monument, that you supported Representative Baker's resolution, and so many others. I believe it was actually bipartisan, some bipartisan support, both in the House and the Senate earlier this year for House Joint Resolution 15. But Representative Dotson, what's your reaction to just see this historic monument that is so foundational with the Ten Commandments on being placed in a proper place of prominence, being put back where it belongs to be on the grounds of your Kentucky Capitol?
Well, it's exciting because a lot of people may not know who I am or much about my background, but I am a pastor and have been a pastor for 29 years, along with being a state representative. But the thing is, for me, is that we have seen a great culture war that has taken place across the nation over the last probably 10 to 15 years that has really pushed back against Christianity, pushed back against family biblical values. And we've seen a lot of those things taken away, and the church has really been silent. We've not been engaged in the cultural wars. And the church has been good about growing faith, walking people through addiction, being there when people are passing away and walking with families through those dark times. But the church has not engaged politically like it should. And now we're seeing people rise up, like Representative Shane Baker, one of my very best friends in the General Assembly, took up a huge piece of legislation that, he had to fight some fights along the way with it, but we stood firm with him. And so locking arm in arm with other conservatives and seeing these things restored in their proper place gives us hope for the future in restoring religious liberties. And so I'm just glad to be a small part of that.
Oh, absolutely. And look, the need to restore religious liberty to its proper place. Look, our founding fathers gave us the First Amendment and specifically protected religious liberty as the first part of the First Amendment because it's foundational. It's foundational to who we are as human beings. created in the image of God, designed to worship and honor Him, and the recognition of that in government is something that's gone back to the very founding of our country. So we certainly have a lot to be thankful for. And as you know, we've got more work to do on that front. There were bills filed this last session to even look to restore the Ten Commandments into the classroom, as other states have done. So we look forward to continuing that conversation and opportunity as we move forward, even in this next legislative session, to do all that we can to protect our most foundational freedom. But Representative Dotson, I wanted to talk with you too. You've been such a champion on so many issues in the General Assembly, but one in particular that we were blessed to get to work with you with is back in the news, and that's the Save Women's Sports or Save Girls Sports laws. These common sense laws that Kentucky and now over half the states have passed to stop this nonsense of allowing biological men who claim to be women to play in our girls' sports and take away opportunities, championships, and even threaten the dignity of our young female athletes here in the Commonwealth and across the nation. And I know you were a champion. You were the lead House sponsor of that bill when it passed back in 2022. But the United States Supreme Court is going to be hearing for the first time a challenge to state Save Women's Sports laws coming up on January 13th. So I encourage folks to be praying for the Supreme Court, be praying for the oral arguments that are going to be taking place and the big rally that's going to be taking place in D.C. on that day. But I just wanted to give you, Representative Dotson, just an opportunity to share your heart on that issue. Why was that such an important issue for you to champion in the General Assembly here in Kentucky?
Well, it was important because when you look again at the culture war that's taken place, and for many of the viewers, I want them to know a little bit about my background. Being a pastor and getting involved politically, a lot of people have a little apprehension for a pastor or someone in church leadership to get involved in politics. But I think we have to get engaged. We have to, if we're going to see these type of things take place, because even within our own party, sometimes a lot of people think things are too controversial. They feel that, what's the need? Do we really want to push that agenda? But the narrative is that we have to. If we don't get engaged politically as Christians, as church leaders, then we're going to see our country slowly keep going into the wrong direction. We're going to deteriorate. We're going to decay morally. And so we have to take these strong stands. And that was one stand that I felt that had to be taken, helping to lead the charge on Save Women's Sports in the state of Kentucky, which I authored the bill and worked closely with the Family Foundation throughout the process and was able to get it across the finish line. And now, for the last 4 years, we've not had one biological male play at girls' sports here in the state of Kentucky. And as you alluded to, our daughters, our nieces, our granddaughters shouldn't be deprived of a scholarship opportunity, the opportunity to get, to play in the sport and not to get a title. I mean, to play against others who consider themselves female when they're biologically male, that's just ludicrous. And helping to lead the charge in the House against gender reassignments on minors. I help lead the charge on keeping boys out of girls' bathrooms and locker rooms. And those common sense things you wouldn't think you would need legislation on. But
we do.
But we do. We're seeing that we have
do.
to. I know. So, but, it's an honor to be able to take those kind of fights.
Yeah.
With Save Women's Sports, the LGBT community came hard against me, not just in the state, but around the nation. Yeah. I got a lot of threats, a lot of bad emails, a lot of angst, and a lot of anger from that community. But that was well worth it for me because it was a battle of conviction and not convenience.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I just want to chime in because I want to kind of roll the tape back for just a minute. Because we're in a moment now, and we continue to be thankful for even what the Trump administration has been doing, signing an executive order on the Save Women's Sports issue and so many other things. The tide really is turning on that issue, and so many others. As I think many folks, as you said, this is a common sense issue, recognizing that it's not possible for someone to change their biological sex, and just the crazy overreach that we have seen from LGBTQ advocates on this issue. But I want to roll the tape back because when you were leading on this issue, it wasn't quite as politically popular as it was now. And there was a huge effort and a lot of pressure from various interests to strip that bill down, to make it really very narrow, to not even include college sports in that bill. And you really were the catalyst in ensuring that we kept a strong bill that protected not just our female athletes in the K through 12 or in high school and middle school, but also in collegiate athletes. And then, what happened in the middle of that? Riley Gaines, University of Kentucky's own Riley Gaines had the whole situation that she had play out and become a national voice, and really just reinforced why it was so important that we pass a strong bill. And I just want to once again give you a lot of credit and kudos for your strong, bold leadership. That's what we need in the General Assembly, and frankly, that's what we need in Washington, D.C. as well. So I'm excited that Representative Dotson's going to stay with us for the next segment. We're going to kind of turn the page a little bit and talk a little bit about the congressional race and some other issues that are happening in D.C. and why Representative Dotson feels called and led to run for that important office. But I encourage you to stay with us. You're listening to Kentucky's Voice. I'm David Walls, proud to guest host today. Stay with us in the next segment.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And we are back. David Walls here, Executive Director of the Family Foundation. It's an honor to guest host this program today. So thankful for Kentucky's Voice and just having another conservative and Christian voice to get the word out, to educate folks, to empower folks to make an impact here in Kentucky as we seek here at the Family Foundation to see God honored in the public policy of our great Commonwealth, because we know when our laws and policies are in alignment with the truths of God's word, it's a blessing to all people. Well, I am excited that we continue to have State Representative Ryan Dotson with us. As we were discussing in the last hour, he's been such a great champion for faith, family, and freedom during his time in the General Assembly. But he's got some other things that he's been working on. Representative Dotson is actually a declared candidate for Congress in next year's election following Andy Barr's announcement that he is not running for that seat and is running for another big election here in Kentucky as well. That is Congressional District 6, which is in central Kentucky and a number of surrounding counties. Representative Dotson, what in the world would make you want to run for Congress and to go up to Washington, D.C.?
Well, I don't want people to think I'm out of my mind, but I felt called to do so. I feel a calling to do it. I have a beautiful life outside of politics. I really do. I got a beautiful family. I'm a grandfather of 4 beautiful grandchildren. I've got a very successful business. So the thing is that outside of politics, I'm fine. I don't need the aggravation, but I feel called to do it. Just like I got engaged on the state level and been able to champion some pretty big things while my tenure in the legislature. And now with this open seat, and I told my wife a couple of years ago, we knew that Mitch McConnell would probably be coming to the end of his term, that he would probably step away. And I knew Andy Barr had aspirations. And I told my wife, and we discussed it a couple of years ago, that if he pursues that, then that would be a clear sign for us to get involved and be a part of this race. And she said, if everything falls into place like that, she said, I'll be fully behind you. And sure enough, it fell right into place as we had talked about. And so that was a clear sign to me. So when Andy Barr came out, I came out 30 minutes after he did. So I wanted there to be no confusion. I wanted people to know directly. While you have other candidates in this race that were just kind of looking and lurking around, trying to figure out who's going to jump in, who, and trying to play mental chess. I'd already planted my flag. I was going to run no matter who jumped in this race because I felt called to do so. So, and I just want to take the same fight that I have taken to Frankfort, Kentucky, to Washington, D.C. We don't need another button pusher. We don't need someone to melt in the shadows. We don't need someone to give in and cave into special interest. We need somebody who's really going to be Kentucky first and America first. And I am the candidate in this race that'll do just that.
Yeah, and I was the way I framed that question might not have been quite the right way, but as you and I have talked before, we appreciate all the great work that you're doing in the General Assembly, and frankly, sometimes it's tough to see some of our good folks decide to run for national office. But as you said, and look, I've been involved in this work now for 12 years, been blessed to have a opportunity to visit and connect in a variety of ways with a lot of elected officials and candidates. And, one of the things I always look for when someone is making a big decision like that is really two things. Do you feel called? Is the Lord calling you to do that?
Right.
And then secondly, is your wife, is your spouse on board? Do they feel that similar calling? And you hit the nail on the head on both of those. And so I'm excited to see you in the race because look, there is some troubling stuff going on in Washington, D.C. There's some good things, but we're still seeing that it truly is a swamp up in D.C. and it's a completely different animal. And we need to be really thinking about, as we move forward here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, as Representative Dotson, shared, look, this is a political earthquake that we're going through. Yes. With Senator McConnell, not running for re-election and the shifting on down the line that's going to go on, we're likely going to be making decisions of who's going to be representing us in a variety of positions up in Washington, D.C. that could impact the future of our great Commonwealth for many, many years. And so that's why I do believe it's so incredibly important that we, as grassroots Christians and conservatives, vet the candidates that are seeking our vote, whether it be in Washington, D.C., whether it be at the state level, whether it be in the local level. And so encourage folks to do that. And I know you, Ryan, are willing and ready to withstand the questions that are going to continue to be asked. And the evaluation that's going to go on of your record and the things that you've done, which, I certainly believe you have a lot to be proud of and thankful for and opportunities that the Lord has given you. But as we shift the conversation to D.C., which really is kind of a whole other animal, some big issues, what are some of the key priorities that you see? And I know you've been up to D.C. a number of times as you've been thinking and praying and preparing to run, to meet with different folks. What do you see as some of the three key issues that you're really campaigning on that you think are important for Kentuckians in District 6?
Well, one of the key things that I want to focus on going to D.C., not only pushing back against the woke agenda and those policies, but I really want to see Central Kentucky, the 6th Congressional District, become all that it can be. When you look geographically of where Kentucky is, we're within a day's drive of 75% of America. And Kentucky, so the 6th district in the center of Kentucky, is the heart of Kentucky. So we're poised really geographically for great growth. We need infrastructures fixed. We need to really do things to enhance our farming community because agriculture is big here in central Kentucky. So I want to be able to secure funding, bring it back to this district, and help work with CEOs around the nation, working with industry leaders, trying to recruit them to come to Central Kentucky. We had a caucus retreat about 3 weeks ago in Paducah. And one of the statistics that really stuck out to me is that Kentucky has grown 6% over the last couple of years. So the policies that we've enacted on the state level and lowering our state income tax, becoming more business friendly, has opened us up to expanding our population. And so we're seeing that tax base grow. And as we recruit, and as I work as a businessman, working with industry leaders, recruiting companies to come to Central Kentucky to locate here, I believe that that's going to bode well for everybody, not just Republicans, but Democrats, independents alike. It's really going to enhance Kentucky by having someone like me with the business experience I have and being able to work well with others, because that's a key factor in becoming successful as a legislature is the relationships you build. So that's going to be one of my focuses when I get up there, is to really do what I can to enhance our positioning here in Kentucky.
Well, that's good. And you mentioned one of the big conversations that is always going on in Washington D.C. is spending, and it's our debt. I think the numbers are we're something like passing $40 trillion in debt and interest payments in the United States. And look, as you know, this is a bipartisan problem.
Right.
This has been a problem that's been created by the swamp in both parties. Over a long period of time. How do you think we address this problem of our out of control spending, and really so many ways government doing things that it's not called and supposed to do?
Right. I tell you, I really appreciated what Elon Musk and Doge done early on this year. And I think that type of work needs to continue. I personally would like to be on the oversight committee, because the oversight committee has subpoena power and be able to call these institutions and these organizations that have been given public confidence and trust, and being able to see where the waste, fraud, and abuse is within these different departments, and really attack those things and protect our taxpayer dollars. So we need to continue that type of work.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, so important that we protect our taxpayer dollars and really work to get our government back to the way our founders envisioned, which was limited in scope and understanding the proper role of government. But thank you, Representative Dotson, for joining us, brother. I wish you a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, sir.
Stay tuned. We've got an exciting guest in our next.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Kentuckians, it's good to be back on this Friday before, the last Friday before Christmas. I hope you and your family are preparing to celebrate one of the most significant events in human history, Christmas, when our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ came to this earth and ultimately lived a perfect life, and ultimately went to the cross to pay the penalty for our sins that we couldn't pay for ourselves. I don't know about you, but that's something worth celebrating. So I hope and pray you're preparing your heart as I am and my family are to celebrate Christmas. I'm really excited to guest host the program today, and I'm really excited to have my friend Les Bernal, National Director of Stop Predatory Gambling, with us today. Les, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure, and hello to all your listeners.
So Les has been one of the leading voices against predatory gambling. Les, could you share what predatory gambling is?
Sure. So we define, first I'd like to start what predatory gambling is not. So it's not the Friday night poker game. It's not, March Madness brackets. It's not a friendly wager on the golf course. I'm an active Catholic. It's not Catholic church bingo. It's not the Super Bowl office pool, that type of those forms of gambling. Those are social forms of gambling. Predatory gambling is when powerful gambling corporations partner with state government to use commercialized gambling, meaning running gambling as a business, to exploit and manipulate the American people. And it's been an epic public policy failure by every measure, whether it's in Kentucky or any other state. And it's become, we like to say, when we talk about what's broken about America today, predatory gambling has become, its advertising and marketing has become the public voice of American government to citizens in every state in our country. It's what we advertise to the American people more than anything else. And what we incentivize, it shapes our national character.
Well, I know your organization has helped been leading the fight against the expansion of predatory gambling. It's been a big issue here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, predominantly because, and this is not just in Kentucky, it's been all over the nation, the explosion of states legalizing predatory sports betting. I don't remember exactly how many states have rushed up into this very, very harmful form of gambling that has essentially turned every internet-connected device, every cell phone, every iPad, every computer into a quote-unquote legalized casino. Les, share with folks just how we got to this point and what you're seeing from a national level now as we're seeing states just rush down the path of promoting really what I like to say is an addiction on top of an addiction, taking these cell phones that we all have that we know are already addictive to begin with, and then putting about the most addictive thing possible on top of them.
Sure. David, there's no single act of state government that inflicts more financial, social, and public health harm, mental health harm to the citizens of Kentucky or any other state than the institution of predatory gambling. It's cruel and oppressive. And we call this system that we have today, it's taxation by exploitation. And I reframe it that way because we all grew up in elementary school. You learn about the principle of no taxation without representation. It's one of our core democratic principles. Today in America, we have an institution of taxation by exploitation. And the latest form of it is what you just described is, particularly online sports gambling, where it was already legal in Kentucky prior to the state legalizing commercialized sports gambling. It was already legal in Kentucky for people to place a sports bet with one another, right? We had a friendly wager on a, March Madness bracket, et cetera, or a game. Like we could already do that with each other. What was illegal is we couldn't run it as a business. And the reason why we couldn't run it as a business is, yes, commercialized gambling is highly addictive, but that's not why it's illegal. It's illegal unless you partner with the state because it's a form of consumer financial fraud, in the family of price gouging and false advertising. It's a con. So this con is only legal if you cut the state in on the profits. And they get regional monopolies. So you and I can't, people talk about, let people be free to do what they want to. People were already free to gamble in Kentucky before this happened. This is really about freedom. Why aren't we free to run our own casino or free to run our own lottery? That's part of the con. This is about giving, special privileges to some powerful interests who are making billions off the backs of the American people. And it leaves the rest of us, whether you gamble or not, you're paying higher taxes for less services today in Kentucky. The people of Kentucky are losing hundreds of millions of dollars every year to these forms of predatory gambling that the state promotes. Who in Kentucky is paying less taxes today? Which one of your listeners is paying less taxes today because of all the incredible amount of wealth that the citizens are losing? You're paying higher taxes today in the state for less services. Aside from the fact that we've rooting families and the exploitation of it all, increasing more divorce, child neglect, poverty, everything else. It's just, but you, the taxpayer, just on the taxes alone, that's part of the con, is you're paying higher taxes for this in the long term. Because who do you think pays for the housing subsidies when people lose all their money, the healthcare subsidies, the food stamps, the criminal incarceration costs? You, the taxpayer.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you shared some on the financial side, Les, and you alluded to it as well, but just the overall social cost of this predatory industry. And as you said, and I think this really is an important point for folks to really understand. When we say predatory, it is because this unique scenario where you have these gambling interests, they partner with the state. So the state has a compelled interest to then try to financially fleece its own citizens. So the financial side is incredibly harmful, but I would argue that the social cost, and this is something, in the work of the Family Foundation, we've been in strong opposition to the expansion of predatory gambling since our inception over 36 years. We have seen time and time again the impact on families, as you said, divorce, increases in domestic violence and bankruptcies. Les, I was curious. I recently saw a study that was talking about the direct connection now between big sporting events that we know are obviously billions of dollars are pouring into, and almost a direct connection to upticks in domestic violence that are happening when those events are going on, because we know, unfortunately, and this is predominantly a problem that is addicting men, not exclusively, but very heavily. It's leading to domestic violence in the home.
That's right. And that's the study that you saw just came out and relates to online sports gambling or commercialized sports gambling, which is obviously, not surprising, because you lose, you wager your money on the game, you put money on the game, you lose it all. You don't tell your spouse, and all of a sudden, hey, we got to go pay some groceries, and it's like husband's like, we don't have any money, like. And it's like, so that causes more enormous amount of friction. Then also the husband will be just incredibly angry if he loses the game, just overall, and so like he takes it out on the people closest to him, his spouse, his kids. So, but what you just described, domestic violence occurs with all forms of predatory gambling, like regional casinos, electronic gambling machines, which Kentucky has them all over the place now. Like those forms of gambling also lead to increased rates of domestic violence. They also lead the legalization of commercialized gambling also contributes to, in ways, to other harms in society that we don't think of it, but like money laundering and commercialized gambling are linked, like they go hand in hand. So if you're running any kind of human sex trafficking business, drug trafficking, any kind of illicit business, they love the introduction of commercialized gambling because it allows them to launder the cash through the casinos, through the lottery, now online gambling, and they report the cash that they've laundered as gambling winnings. So it allows them to go pay taxes on that the so-called gambling winnings that were really drug money or human sex trafficking profits, and then put them into the normal public square, like buying property and other goods and services. We've created a vehicle for all these criminal enterprises to wash all this dirty money. So it not only does it increase harm within the home, it also increases harm and crime outside of the home through the role that commercialized gambling plays in money laundering.
Yeah, you mentioned casinos and the harm, obviously, that in-person gambling still takes place in a lot of places. Obviously, a lot of focus recently on the sports betting side and on the online side because of the actions of so many states. But there have been some less here in Kentucky that are continuing to say that Kentucky needs to go further down this path. That we should actually legalize full casinos and legalize gambling. Could you just speak to why that would just be incredibly unwise for Kentucky to go down that path that some other states, and including some neighboring states, have already gone down?
Yeah, there's no debate on whether legalizing regional casinos, like the kind being proposed for Kentucky, on whether or not like it's a good idea. Like the evidence, the facts are overwhelming in state after state that this has been an epic public policy failure by every measure. We talk about Pennsylvania's got like 10 or 11 casinos across the state, and they do these promotions. They got 15,000 people that work at the casinos, including part-time jobs. Okay, just in their press release from the Pennsylvania Gambling Commission, the body that supports these casinos, they reported that 30,000 citizens have called to self-exclude from these casinos. Okay, and that's people who self-exclude. That's just like the tip of the iceberg in terms of the amount of harm people who are addicted to these places. So that's double the amount of people who are self-excluding is double the amount of people who work at these casinos. Okay, that doesn't include 92% of the citizens who are harmed never come forward for help. So like casinos create addicts, they don't create jobs, and you, the taxpayer, you paying higher taxes for less services for this whole scheme, and the only people who profit from this are the people who run the casinos, and that's why they lobby millions and millions of dollars in your state to try to ram these through.
Absolutely. Well, and we have seen that, and that's been one of the arguments that we've tried to share with legislators is the interests that you are empowering do not share the values of Kentucky, certainly our conservative values. So stay tuned. Les is going to join us for the last segment. More to come.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Hey, friends, David Walls here. Happy to be guest hosting again. Excited about our last segment of the day and continuing the conversation with my friend Les Bernal, who is National Director of Stop Predatory Gambling. You know, Stop Predatory Gambling just does great work across the nation, and they've done great work here in Kentucky. They've been a huge help and resource to the Family Foundation, the organization that I'm blessed to help lead in our efforts to try to stop the expansion of predatory gambling over many years. Les has been here. He joined us at our Kentucky Family Forum, one of our recent ones, and was on one of the panels that got, I would say, some of the most interest as he and his organization are continuing to really shine a light on one of the most harmful aspects of our society, plagues of our society that are really expanding in unprecedented levels. But as we continue the conversation, I've got to just mention, I mean, Les, in the last, a couple of weeks, there have been so many sports betting scandals in multiple major sports leagues at the collegiate level. I mean, frankly, there have been so many scandals, I can't even keep them all up. But obviously, you know, we've heard about what happened in the NBA, where you've got a Hall of Fame player and coach who is been indicted, and others for sports betting related scandals. I just have to think back and remember when we were fighting against the efforts to legalize so-called sports betting here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and we held it back for several years, but unfortunately, the interest and the money pushed it over the line back in 2023. We were told these scandals, that was just fear-mongering, Les, that those were the things of the past, that we had the technology, we wouldn't see these kinds of things happen again. Les, are you surprised that we're seeing a proliferation of scandals that are plaguing sports across the nation now in light of what's happening and the amount of money that's involved?
Yeah, those scandals you reference, again, are just the latest example of how the legalization of commercialized gambling in Kentucky and across the country has been an epic public policy failure by every measure. They said it was going to, you know, protect sports and bring gambling out of the shadows, would make sports better. Anyone who's consumed sports today, almost to a person, can agree that sports, whether it's college level, professional level, is as corrupt as we've ever seen it in my lifetime. Like the gambling scandals in my lifetime, and I'm in my mid-50s now. Prior to 2018, I could count them on one hand. The major scandals. You know, now we have a major scandal like every week, because this is, you know, this goes to the larger picture here. So, you know, this is a Christian talk radio program, and like, what are the values of America? The values of America today, regardless of people's political stripes, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, like the values that have dominated America are Las Vegas values, right? Greed, you know, selfishness, short-term thinking, you know, not helping your neighbor, not loving your neighbor. Like, this is the antithesis of who we're supposed to be as Christians. You know, putting love into the world, love into action, and Las Vegas values have become American values, and that's a new phenomenon. And that wasn't done by a grassroots movement. That was done by powerful financial interests over the last 40 years in partnership with public officials from both political parties who lust for more power, okay? So Las Vegas values have become the voice of America today. And so it corrupts our government, it corrupts our families, and it's corrupting our economy, and it sure as heck is corrupting our sports. And these scandals are the exclamation point on that.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and I agree with everything you said, Les, but it's even, you know, deeper than that now, because it's impacting our kids. And I'm a father. I've got 3 young kids. just in the conversations that I've had with our supporters, with pastors, with teachers in the public school system, the way that we have moved this industry forward now and just opened the door, particularly on the online side, children are getting access to these platforms. It's proliferating. I mean, goodness, you can't watch a sports program anymore without just being blasted and it essentially being. I mean, ESPN, Disney is in the gambling business. They're making money off of it. It is in the DNA of everything that we're seeing. It's really changing the whole way in which we consume sports and the way kids are going to think about sports as we move forward. But we know kids are getting access to it. And, one of the interesting things about Kentucky is we're one of, I think, just maybe 3-4 states that actually allows gambling at 18. And a lot of that has to do, obviously, with the history of the horse racing industry here in Kentucky. But when the General Assembly legalized sports betting, Les, they kept the age at 18. So we're one of the few states that allows it at 18. What are you seeing across the country as far as these tremendous harms and particularly the addiction side of it trickling down and targeting our children?
Yeah. So I just want to be clear in terms of the word choice that we use. Kids just don't have access to these forms of predatory gambling. They are swimming in predatory gambling. They are surrounded by it. It's become part of their daily life, especially for young men and boys. So you have an entire generation today of people growing up, young people, who think sports and gambling are one and the same, that you're no longer a sports fan anymore unless you're gambling on the game. So if any middle school principal, high school principal, and you ask them, is there a problem with commercialized gambling in your school cafeterias, school locker rooms, and the school playgrounds? To a person, they're going to say definitively yes. We have an epidemic of gambling addiction today amongst young people, especially young males. It's like, because this is a gambling fentanyl. We keep talking about the problem of the drug fentanyl in America today and how much these forms of online gambling that kids are using and being marketed to. This is gambling fentanyl, and it's being done in partnership with state government. That's why the institution of predatory gambling is America's most neglected major problem, and it's Kentucky's most neglected major problem.
Well, Les, I've had these very conversations, and I'll just share one. This was a little over a year ago. I was talking with a pastor who's a supporter of our organization, and he was sharing with me that his wife is a public school teacher, actually teaches 12th grade, and he was asking, he was like, why in the world is the quote unquote legal gambling age in Kentucky 18 for these sports betting apps? And I shared some of the history about that. But he said, my wife is dealing with students who or those that are seniors that had already turned 18. Not only are they, dealing with the issue of phones in schools, some of them are legally gambling on their phones at school. I just can't imagine what some of our teachers in the public school system is having to deal with on this issue. Now, I'm thankful that we worked with the General Assembly to help support legislation to remove cell phones from the instructional time in schools this last session. But look, the issue still continues. And one of the things that I'd like to see happen, and love to get your feedback on this, Les, is, here in Kentucky, a number of states have passed strong laws requiring meaningful age verification to protect our kids from online pornography. And that has led to some of these pornographic websites shutting down because we know their business model was to target kids, unfortunately. And there's been a lot of conversation about how we need to protect kids from social media and the addictive tendencies to those, and looking at ways that we can empower parents to ensure that parents sign off on their children downloading and having accounts on these apps. Les, my question is, why shouldn't we be at least at the minimum requiring these sports betting companies to have to follow the law and to put teeth into it and say, look, you have to keep kids off these platforms, and if you don't, then the parents have recourse against you. I think that's a policy conversation that we need to be having as a stopgap measure to at least ensure that we're doing everything we can to protect our kids from these harms.
Yeah. Again, none of us, the time, whether it's Kentucky or any other state, like the debate's over. Like, predatory gambling has been an epic policy failure, and sports gambling and the impact it's having on kids, and the idea that Kentucky legislators of both parties and the governor and the statewide officials, the idea that they've allowed 18-year-olds to gamble on online sports gambling is one of the biggest embarrassments in the country. Like, this is it should be anyone with a sense of moral conscience would allow the state government to prey upon 18-year-olds with this product. It's the complete opposite of who we are supposed to be as a nation. So, like, when you talk about the idea of having age verification, that should be the minimum standard, minimum action. Like that's a layup. That should happen tomorrow in the state of Kentucky.
Yeah.
Well, and for your listeners who, by the way, who think like this isn't happening in your family, if you're a grandparent and you have grandkids, or you're an aunt and uncle, you have nieces and nephews, or your own kids, like if you think your kids either aren't gambling or they're not surrounded by kids who are gambling, I'm respectfully here to tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. This is the dominant thing today for young people, especially young boys. Kids used to collect baseball cards and sports cards of their favorite athletes growing up. Today, they're talking about parlay bets on school playgrounds. And so you as a parent, a grandparent, an aunt and uncle, this needs to be a top priority in your life to address this with your kids, and then to speak out with the legislators and say, this is broken, and you need to get state government back on the side of the people of Kentucky.
Absolutely. It is an issue and a conversation we need to be leaning into as families and the church as well. The church needs to be addressing this issue, because whether we all realize it or not, this is impacting folks within our congregations and even our young people. Okay. Absolutely. But I want to end our conversation today with the glimmer of hope, Les. And I know there's just frankly, a lot of concern. It has been a policy disaster, like you said. Anyone who can look at what's going on now,
by every measure,
and it was predictable. We want to talk about making a bet. You could have bet that this is exactly what was going to happen: more scandals, more addictions, more harm to families,
more budget deficits, higher taxes, all of that.
Absolutely. But we're starting to see at least some of our elected officials recognize that we shouldn't have gone down this path. Would you leave our viewers with do you think there's a glimmer of hope that we can start having these conversations about pulling back and reversing course?
Yeah, I mean, we won last year in 2025. We were in 11 different states. We defeated online gambling expansion. So we're winning in state legislatures. There's a growing movement of people from the political right and the left who are recognizing that the institution of predatory gambling is indeed this country's most neglected major problem. And so if you want to make America healthy again, that's the big thing in the Trump administration right now. You want to make America great again, all of that.
Absolutely.
This is Exhibit A.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, folks, that is all for today's Kentucky Voice. A big thank you to my guests, Ryan Dotson and Les Bernal, for joining us. I'm David Walls with the Family Foundation. Thanks for listening to Kentucky's Voice.